Pneumatic paint sprayers are a very handy tool for scenic artists. There are many types and sizes, but paint shops will most likely have an HVLP, which stands for High Volume, Low Pressure. Most often, I have seen HVLP sprayers that are gravity fed, meaning the paint cup is on top of the gun and the paint can flow directly down into the gun without extra pressure. So today, I want to show you 3 gravity-fed HVLP sprayers, how to adjust the spray on them, and a few tips for beginners. This first gun is a rather basic model that comes with a paint cup that you can screw onto the top of the gun. There are 3 knobs and a connector for an air hose. This sprayer is basically a mini version of the first. It has a cup that screws onto the side, 3 knobs, and an air hose connector. It is bigger than an airbrush, but not as hefty as a full-sized gun, so it is good for really small jobs, like props. This sprayer is my personal favorite. It looks a little different than the others because the needle is not encased inside the sprayer, and you clip on a detachable, disposable tip. There are different tip sizes, so you can choose one based on what you are spraying. You'll notice that you attach the paint cup on the tip piece, which in this gun consists of a hard cup, a disposable soft plastic liner, and a lid that has a strainer mesh inside. Once it is all put together, it looks a lot like the first sprayer. Because many parts of this sprayer are disposable, it is good for oil-based paints, so you don't have to struggle with cleaning the sprayer after you use it. But it is also great for water-based paints. You can clean the disposable parts and reuse them until the plastic wears out. I also love this gun because it is really easy to switch between colors. The soft plastic liner can slip out and fits perfectly in a paint deli cup, so you can have different colors ready to go. All you have to do is run some water through the tip to clear out the previous color. The first 2 sprayers need to be taken apart to properly clean them. Running water through them is usually not enough. They both unscrew at the tip, which then allows the tip to pop out. You'll find a good amount of paint hiding in this part, but you need to take it apart all the way to the needle to really make sure the gun is clean. With the correct size hexagon wrench, you can unscrew the final piece. Sometimes it helps to pull back on the trigger so that the needle is out of the way and not pushing on the piece you are unscrewing. As you can see, there are lots of little pieces and holes for paint to clog up your gun, which will eventually make them impossible to use. Once it is all clean, you put it back together the way you took it apart. Remember that pulling the trigger to pull the needle back makes it easier to screw the inner piece back in, and make sure you tighten it all the way. The final thing to note about any gun you use is the pressure you should use it at. The PSI might be noted on the cup, be engraved directly on the side of the gun, or be in the user manual. Make sure you know what PSI it should be at, and make sure your compressed air source is properly set to it. At the wrong pressure, the gun won't work properly, and in the worst case scenario, something could explode. So do it right. No matter what sprayer you are using, it will probably have the same 3 knobs. On all 3 of these guns, the top one controls the spray fan, the one underneath controls the amount of fluid by adjusting the needle, and the bottom one controls small changes in air pressure. The fan knob makes the spray come out as a round dot or as a fan. Tightening the needle knob keeps the needle from pulling all the way back, which then restricts the amount of paint it is letting through. The air pressure knob is not meant to make large adjustments in air pressure, but it is helpful to adjust depending on how thick or thin your paint is. Speaking of how thick your paint is, you need to make sure it is the right viscosity for what you are doing. This is a water-based paint that I thinned to my preferred thickness. I'm really bad about keeping track of ratios, but I usually start at 1:1 paint to water and look at how it runs off my brush or stir stick. Each type of paint and type of sprayer is different, so play with what you have to figure out what works best for you. Once you are ready to go, attach your air hose. If you have a pressure dial, you can see that when the gun isn't in use, the pressure reads higher compared to when you pull the trigger. If you pull the trigger halfway, it will only blow air, and I adjust the air pressure with the trigger half pulled to make sure it will spray the paint at the right pressure. So first I want to show you what happens when both knobs are tightened completely. This means the spray will be small and round, and the needle won't pull back very far. Next, I loosened the fan knob a lot, and the needle knob just a little bit. You can see that the paint comes out as a fan, but the amount of paint is restricted. If I don't touch the fan knob, but loosen the needle knob a lot more, the spray is drastically different. Also, if I don't touch the settings but put a thicker or thinner paint in the sprayer, the exact same settings will spray differently. This is why it is important to play with your settings before you start spraying your project. I also want to show how easy it is to clean this sprayer. Once you take off the cup, you just pop out the tip and only a small portion of the needle is dirty, so it is very easy to clean with a rag. This is why it's my favorite sprayer. And lastly, I want to give some practical tips and spraying techniques. First, it will usually take several layers to get complete coverage, so plan to work in steps. When working on a large surface, work in rows and overlap each row a little. Have a scrap surface you can test your spray on. If you want a completely smooth finish, sand with 400 to 800 grit sandpaper between coats. Wipe off the dust with a tack cloth to completely clean the surface between layers. Wear a proper respirator with the correct cartridge for what you are spraying. Work in a properly ventilated space. This room I'm in is a large spray booth with filters and a strong air fan system. Be conscious of overspray and aerosolizing the paint. I wasn't really happy with the settings I had my sprayer on in this moment. It was creating too much of a cloud. There was too much paint in the air. If your spray is creating a fog like this, or worse, the pressure is probably too high or the gun is releasing too much paint. So try adjusting the pressure or the needle knob. Overspray is annoying because it will settle on everything, everywhere, creating a lot of dust, which is bad for your project. Maintain a steady, consistent speed. Before you start, make sure you have enough space, obstacles are out of the way, and you have enough air hose length to walk around. Maintain a consistent distance from the surface. This, along with working at a steady speed, will ensure your spray is evenly applied. A lot can be said about pneumatic sprayers, but I hope this video serves as a basic foundation for you to get started and continue learning.